That's exciting. I have to get my schedule. I have a I don't want to. So I'm gonna join Max's class on site with Sherry. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. That's it. And absolutely. Try to see the next one. Oh, what? I gotta talk about that fee. Yeah, that's I think the big news. That's probably the big news. I mean, other than that, not really anything here. That's the other thing. It doesn't matter, there's nobody in personnel. Which is very exciting. See, the state requires that we people who go to these schools, we have to bus them. Really? Yeah, spending we have to bus them to wherever they want. And maybe, so you have a bus with 5 people, maybe sometimes maybe 2. And you got to pay to do that. Oftentimes, you got to in lieu of transportation. We just give them money. Here, go buy gas. Call Uber. When I take your kid to school. So
That is wild.
yeah, must have been a change. Andreas probably knows. Must have been a change in legislative law in the ORC. Now they can do it too.
Well, it allows us to, if there's a, it's impractical for the district, and we would have to employ a whole new bus and a driver. So,
And is that different from what we've done before?
no, there's plenty
Okay,
of schools that
same.
we've done payment and
Okay.
due for. This is just a new building.
Okay, this is just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 minute.
So that-
How's that? How's that?
Batija. No, Batika. Victoria. Victoria.
Oh, yeah.
Matika is how you say it.
Matika.
Yeah, Matika, if that's where you want it. Yeah.
Forget the J. That's the J sounds like the T. No,
The JG Center.
not even there. Oh. Oh, no, no.
Public comments. We get to- I don't know if I just public comments. I think I asked this like once every day.
Sometimes, most of the time.
Something's got a lot of action.
Sounds like it could be really cool. Five people are they're all. That's why.
Two and a half, registration. What do you have to do a writing? You have to make it. Is a percentage of the people that work.
You're saying that's more than 3. Sports facilities. Sport business.
What's it?
That's what I did at height instead of awesome. You said the same. You'll sit down. Yeah. That'd be it.
All right, my apologies. That clock is wrong. I was looking at it, so it's 6:03. So I call this meeting to order. Mr. Scarpino, if you could call the roll.
Mr. Gilly. Here. Mr. Kelly. Here. Mrs. Ballum.
Here.
Mr. Gibson. Mr. Grimm.
Here, and I'd just like to comment, Mr. Gibson is not here tonight. His family suffered a death in the family, so our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family this evening. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we have public comments. We do have some people signed up, so. This first. Community comments are one way for citizens to communicate with the Board of Education. When your name is called, please come to the podium and state your name, address, and topic. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Remember, this is a formal and official meeting of the Board of Education, and what you say becomes part of the official meeting record. If your comment involves a problem with a student, employee, or board member, please do not identify them by name. Keep in mind, we are meeting in a schoolhouse and in the presence of students at times, and at this time, the primary role of the Board of Education is to listen and reflect on what is said. We may respond to your questions and ask our own, but not always. So whether we respond or not, please know that your comments and your input is valued. So first, Catherine Danner.
Come up here to the mic.
Come on up.
Is the mic on?
Yep.
That guy you were sitting with back there knows me. He knows we don't bite.
I know, sorry. I'm not very good at speaking and I wasn't my first attendance, sorry. So I'm not familiar with the processes.
No problem. You can just state your name and your address.
Catherine Danner, 9605 Elman Road. So, it was just in regards to the transportation for the biomed campuses to the new Ravenna campus. So I just am curious to why the decision to not transport them. It seems like there's going to be, I believe the high school still transports to Maplewood, and that seems like it would be along the same route. And this is going to be very difficult for families trying to get their kids to this school.
Okay, thank you. And then just so everybody knows, it is on our agenda tonight, and I'm sure we have some comments about that. Thank you. Robert Danner. You, we might bite.
I might not.
I know.
Not really.
Mr. Danner, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Robert Danner, 9604 Elman Road. I'm here in support, and the reason I'm here in support is, as a former bus driver with Crestwood, I know the routine of the buses busing to Maplewood, both from Streetsboro and Manaway. And where our granddaughter will be attending is actually right on the route to Maplewood. Having driven that route for years, driving Maplewood students, I can envision that if I were in the bus today, that for me to take students from Crestwood or from Streetsboro for that matter, coming down 14 or 44, it would be about a 5-minute change in the route to go to what is now Fortis, which is going to be the new biomed. So the only thing I'm here is to support the rationale as to why it wouldn't be possible or why it should be possible. Again, our routes as drivers, we used to have route sheets that we would have to update. We would have to have our time of leaving, our time of arrival, the time of our first pickup, so on and so forth. So those could vary by some minutes because there were times that another student was added to your route or deleted, which changed your arrival and your destination times. So the only thing that I would say is, looking at the situation, I don't see where for Crestwood or for Streetsboro, it would be a great deal of a problem to be able to bus these students.
Thank you, Mr. Danner.
Thank you.
Carmen Lodato.
I think I'm classified as a biter. Anyways. Carmen Lodato, 1460 Trader Drive. I'm here to talk tonight about the district's proposal to raise family sports passes from $150 to $200 for families and $50 to $75 for individuals. When I heard this news from the athletic secretary, I was frankly shocked. That is a huge increase when something only costs $150 to bump it all the way up to $200. That's not a small increase. The first thing that I thought of was that it doesn't make financial sense, because to get into a varsity football game, it's $7. And for kids, it's $4. For students or for seniors, it's $6. And then for everything else, it's $6. So if you start doing the math, families have to go to 12, 15 games to even make that worth it. And I would think that the benefit of a pass would be that the district gets a large amount of money up front. And then the benefit, the quid pro quo for the families is long range, you save some money. With this proposal, I don't think anybody's saving anything. It's just giving the district all the money up front. So the other thing is that you have to think about who's buying these passes. It's not the average citizen coming to watch some Friday Night Lights or the person dropping in to watch their neighbor's cousin's friend play basketball. The people who are buying these passes are the families of the athletes. And we are a pay-to-play district. We pay $150 per athlete, per sport, and we're one of the highest in the conference. And making us pay another $50, it's hard on us. I know there's a lot of parents of athletes out there in the audience, and I have 3 high school athletes. And the amount of money that I pay in the passes, the sports fees for me alone, it'll be $450 for the fall. I have 1 in soccer and 2 in cross country. That's $450 plus another $200. So before I buy back to school supplies or anything else, I gotta write a check for $650. And I only make like $35,000 a year and I'm a single mom of 3 kids. So that hits me hard. And these families pay a lot in shoes, socks, equipment, team dinners. I mean, you name it. We're being hit up for money constantly. And it's not, if I had a suggestion to make, it would be to raise the entry fee by $1. Because if somebody has to pay $8 instead of $7 to get into a game, they're not gonna miss the dollar. But I'm going to miss an extra $50. And so are the other families that are paying this upfront money for all of these extra items. And a lot of our pay to play, pay to participate costs don't even cover everything. For soccer, I had to buy an extra $18 of socks. It's the pictures, and these are the people who represent this school. My daughters work their butts off for this school. They are out there, they are in the gym, and all to be representatives and ambassadors of this district. And I think it would just be very nice if we could keep this the same, because although I realize we haven't raised this since the 90s, is my understanding. In the 90s, we didn't have pay to participate, and we didn't have to keep our athletes in all year round travel leagues to stay competitive. So the sports culture has changed, and it would be nice if this one thing could just stay constant. Thank you.
Thank you. Lena McDowell?
Hello, Lee McDowell, 9221 St. Nicholas Drive. I'm here to talk about busing to Biomed as well. I think it was very unfair to tell us last minute about the no busing. Those of us that have jobs, this really affects that. We also pay for our kids to ride a bus, and I think that they should be able to ride a bus to Biomed as well. It's on the way to Maplewood, there's no reason not to. If there's not enough kids for a bus, I think we should be offered a van from the transportation department. That's it.
Thank you. And Jody Stone?
Hello, Jody Stump, 1464 Duncan Way. I'm also here curious about the busing, with some of my friends back there. We had contacted the transportation department earlier in the summer. We were told that a high school bus would pick our daughter up from our driveway, take her to the high school. Another bus would take her to Biomed. And I don't know what happened from that time until now. We still live in the district. We're just seeking out a different location for our daughter, just a different opportunity. So we're still taxpayers paying for the school levy. We voted for it. So I feel like we should benefit from it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no one else signed up. So at this time, we are going to move on to superintendent's reports. Mr. Dahlbaum. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Radio station.
Yeah, we weren't here last month, so it's a little split, but
Welcome back.
yeah, it's nice to be back. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the live broadcast of the Streetsboro Board of Education meeting. I am Alex Antonczyk. Tonight's meeting, as always, being held in the Henry Deffer Intermediate Cafeteria. We can throw it back on over to you, School Board President, Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Alex. Now, Mr. Dahlbaum. Oh, yeah, we do. I'm off tonight, man. I had a long day of the sun yesterday. I'm sorry.
I'll move it on hold.
Yes, it would, because I'm not getting it on the screen.
Let's go.
Any discussion?
I just move that we adopt the minutes in the last meeting.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Ballard,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly. Yes. Mr. Violi.
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes, motion carries. Now item 3, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. First item on the superintendent's report, I've been asked for the board to consider what Ms. Lodada brought up about the increase in our family passes. And I also have that under superintendent's recommendation. The reason I brought this up under my report is because I wanted the board to have the opportunity to discuss this, get a feeling for where you're at, and then we can make a decision on whether or not we want it to vote, very frankly. So I'll give you a quick history lesson. I know Ms. Lodada did indicate that there hasn't been an increase in our athletic passes since the 90s. It's been well over 10 years since there has been an increase. That is correct. Currently, our fees are $150 for a family pass and $50 for an individual pass. And due to a $9,000 deficit in our athletic program last year, we charged Mr. TV Ball, very frankly, with CJ and I met with him in the spring and said, you need to find ways to make up that $9,000 different. So one of the ways that he did some research, and one of the ways he did suggest was what you see in front of you is that increase in athletic passes. I do have some anecdotal data from around the county of schools that are similar to our size. I did put that down under the administrative contact, but I will read that for everyone here. So at Crestwood, your family pass at Crestwood is $200, and then that's for up to 5 people, and any additional person after that is $40 a piece. In Aurora, the family pass is $200 a year, and that's for any 2 people or parents or student. In Ravenna, the family pass is $200 a year. Maybe that's for 2 children, or 2 adults, up to 3 children. And then in Kenston, their package is $250 per year, and that would include 2 adults and 2 student passes. And then Kent has a hybrid model, and you can see on that, and they actually have a family pass, and it's punches. So you have 10 punches for 2 adults and up to 4 children. And those 10 punches then would encompass all athletic events, varsity athletic events, and that pass is $140. So I wanted you guys to have some data before we discuss this. Again, Mr. TV Paul is making this recommendation based on the fact that we met with him after the year concluded when we had that $9,000 deficit in athletics. And we charged with him trying to find ways to reduce fees. And he did, to his credit, he did a nice job of meeting with university hospitals who have provided our athletic trainer for years at a cost to the district. And he was able to knock that price down significantly, along with, we were paying a significant amount of money in greens fees for our golfers. And with golf, that's probably our most expensive sport because it's the most expensive for as few kids as we have that participate in golf. We decided not to cancel golf, but he went out there and kind of beat the bushes with some other athletic directors, and they were able to beat down green fees by more than a couple $1,000s actually. So he did go out there and shake the bushes, if you will, to try and get some savings. But that's why this is in front of you. I only put it on as a recommendation under my report or under my recommendations. For the simple fact that if we have some discussion and you agree with this, then we'll vote on it. If we have some discussion and the feeling is we don't want to do that, then we simply pull out. So I'd like to open up the floor.
So I would just start with the work that he did do. So you said there's a $9,000 deficit that he needs to overcome. Sorry, it's so loud. How much was he able to bring that down with some of what he already did?
About $7,000.
He brought it down $7,000.
And that was, and that was before, that's before we even go into the cycle of collecting the paid fees like Ms. Lodada talked about. Very frankly, we live in a community that folks, a lot of our folks, they have a difficult time making ends meet. And so, and the pay-to-pay fees are a burden on a lot of folks. But our $9,000 deficit shows that a lot of our folks struggle to even pay that. And so we try to make accommodations for families. So that's why we said to Randy, you've got to find a way to reduce that deficit and come up with some ways to save. So like I said, he did that, and then his suggestion was we can make up some more money with our family passes. But I want to acknowledge what Ms. Lodato said is that I do personally know that that's a burden for a lot of families to pay for these fees. And I wish that we were in a position to eliminate those, but we're not.
So, I guess my second question, following up on my first, if you brought it down $7,000, you know, what about the possibility, where would we stand if we added $1 to our gate income? Would that make a dent in that remaining couple of $1,000s?
I would say it would have to make a dent, but I don't have that data here. But to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I think if we raised our gate fees, that would have to, because we average probably on a light game more than 1,500 to 2,000 spectators. But our fees are still our fees. You know, we still have to pay your game workers, your officials, all of it. But if you raise that, if you go through that exercise of raising just the adult price and maybe not the students or the senior citizens, the students sometimes are working during the week at McDonald's or wherever to dream of money to the games. You know, our senior citizens certainly, I mean, we all know are on fixed incomes. So if you tag that dollar onto your adult ticket, that's gonna raise some money and it's going to chip away. We do have 6 home games this year. Last year we only had 4, and that was part of the deficit because we only had 4. Our biggest pooler is our varsity football, and we only had 4 home football games last year. We do have 6 this year. We alternate every year.
I do like what Denise said. I really like that idea of raising it $1, make up that deficit. The other thing is, because our senior citizens are on such fixed incomes, I was trying to find the information online today, but I couldn't about the senior citizens passes. I believe they get free admission.
I'm still trying to verify that, so I don't want to give you the wrong data.
Well, and
I know that we have folks stopping by the board office all the time for passes from senior citizens, but I don't want to go as far as saying they're free passes. I believe we do, but I don't want to verify that, so I hear back from Randy.
And that could be a discussion for the next board meeting. But I would like to see, to make sure that one, they have a free pass to get in. Love to have them at all of our events and see what the age limit is. Whether if it's 65, maybe we can lower it to give more people an opportunity to come up and see the schools that they have continued to support. Any other discussions? I have a question.
Any idea how many family passes and how many individual passes we sell per year?
I don't have that data. No.
Guesstimate?
I'm not going to guess because I don't know. When I've given estimates before, I've been called out on back to an estimate, so I'm not going to give the data unless I have it. I'm sorry.
Would it be possible to have Randy do some additional research, get these questions to us, and then if we can vote on it at the next board meeting, we can have it at our walkthrough in, I think, a week?
When did the passes go on sale?
We've delayed that because of, and actually, I'm sorry, Ms. Lodato, I keep calling your name out, but actually, she brought this to my attention, that it was on the website prematurely, and I had it immediately taken down as soon as I found out about it, because that does need to be board approved. So we've actually delayed selling passes, waiting for tonight for some decision. If I had a recommendation, honestly, you haven't asked me for my recommendation, but if I had a recommendation, I would say we hold off on that this year and we need to do a study on it. Because I don't think we have enough data to make this decision. And this is not a reflection on Randy. He was charged with trying to make up money. But I don't have data for you that you're asking for because I wasn't prepared for it. I know that Randy worked hard to try and save some money, and he did achieve a significant savings athletically. We haven't begun the cycle of collecting fees yet, but my suggestion would be that I think that would be prudent to maybe delay this and have you charge me, and I'll charge Randy with studying this and getting the data that you need, because Crestwood's not Streetsboro, Aurora's not Streetsboro, so forth, so on, for Streetsboro. And we need to, and I think there was enough, input on Facebook, and then Ms. Lovato was courageous enough to come here and express that for folks. I think that it's probably a good idea to study this.
And be careful raising the fees at the gate too. I don't want to be known as the expensive city to go watch a game either, so I would be careful doing that as well.
I think we hold on everything.
Right, but I would also do some studies on what other facilities charge, what the cities charge for their fee fees. I'd be careful doing that, in my opinion.
If we are lower, I would agree, raise it a little bit, $1 or $2, $6 or $7 doesn't seem like a lot to get and watch a game, especially when you're supporting our athletes.
You gotta figure out a way of increasing the attendance so that you can actually profit from that game.
So we haven't increased the pass fee though for 10 years, right? I mean, that says something about our district too. So
I just think it's too late in the game to change it right now. I would agree that hold off this year, research, get some data, and possibly put on for next year and see what the number is that you actually need to make up that deficit.
Just a little more input. I can maybe give you a little more perspective on this. Randy's doing a great job at looking at everything and evaluating everything. The athletics budget was year after year, they had a nice budget built up, so they were carrying funds over. I think at some point, when the stadium was built, the track was built, a lot of new equipment had to be purchased and things of that nature, because there was never a track before. They needed some track equipment, things like that. That started to deplete that.
Baseball, softball.
Softball fields, all of those things. So it started to deplete that. So this was the first year where that really started to feel that. Now, this was the first time since I've been here where we had to advance that money to athletics, and it was a very minimal amount. It was like $161 and some change at the end of this year, because we really tried to crack down and figure out what we could do, looked at all of the expenses in athletics, tried to see what was truly an athletic expense and what was truly expenses for the district wide and things of that nature. I've sat down with Randy, I've discussed his budget going into this year, and him and I both know that we're gonna really monitor that. I'm gonna talk to him every step of the way, and we're gonna continue to try to keep that even or start to build his reserves again. So I just wanted to let you guys know those discussions have already taken place. I'm in constant contact with Randy before any sort of purchases or anything of that nature. We have discussions on that issue. So we're gonna keep monitoring it. We're gonna do the best we can. But also at the end of the day, if there's something that comes up and it's gonna benefit our student athletes and we need to use the general fund to subsidize that, that's a topic for discussion where we probably would want to do that.
Right.
Even if that means advancing it at the end of the fiscal year. Because we wanna do what's best for kids, so.
Yeah, I do want to say publicly, because I know all of you know this, but when we passed our 9 levy, I was still charged with cutting more than $600,000 each year from our budget. So that went back to all of our administrators, is you guys critically analyze everything in operation. So I think that's where this came from. This wasn't against anyone. This was simply, hey, this is the area we haven't touched it in several years. Maybe we should just raise that. But I think I like the decision you guys. I hear that. I think you're making. Let's just not touch it for a year. Let's study it, see where we land at the end of this next fiscal year, and if it necessitates raising it, then we should go have enough data. If we collect it correctly, we probably have the data. I did not have it tonight. Then we can entertain raising it next July and giving parents then more than 3 weeks before football season starts. Hey, by the way, that's $50 more for that is a lot of money.
And if we get the research done and get it back to the board in the spring, maybe by May, by the end of the school year, so that information gets out, that the board at that time can.
Yeah, because by May, we will know where we are athletically. We'll know that at that point if we're in the deficit. Because we did operate, we only advanced $100 and some from the general fund, but we were operating in deficit status in athletics. And actually, we've been operating in deficit status for a few years. I believe that because we've had a carryover, but the largest deficit was this past year of over $9,000.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Next item on my list are athletic facilities. So back in May or June, I apologize, I don't remember which month it was. We presented an idea for the use of our facilities for athletics. This is strictly athletics. Don't think Boy Scouts, don't think the auditorium. For athletics, and we had come up with basically a proposal that there was a rental fee for all groups. Plus, if it was on a Saturday or after hours that we would charge, we have to pay a custodian overtime fees, okay? And then if there was use of the stadium or there was a tournament, there would have to be a game manager there. And some of that's driven by our negotiated contracts. Others are just in order, it's to be a responsible district. You need to have a custodian, we have to have a custodian there when we're using facilities. You need it there for safety reasons, because of, if there's an accident, if there's a water problem, and multitudes of reasons. And the feedback I got from all of you was that, well, not all of you, a couple of you were pretty energetic over the charges. So if you wouldn't mind opening up that facility, athletic facilities link that I provided down in your board docs. In a nutshell, I'm going to go through this, but in a nutshell, what we're proposing is that we make all facilities, now there are some exceptions to this, I'll go through it. We want to make all facilities free to our Streetsboro youth teams. The exception to that would be when it would necessitate overtime hours. So before we propose that they pay a fee and they pay the overtime for the custodian, okay? And so now what we're saying is we're going to eliminate all fees, and there's some exceptions to that in a minute. We're proposing that we take Streetsboro teams, Streetsboro youth teams, not your for-profit folks, but your Streetsboro youth teams, and make our facilities open to them for free. Now, when we open on the weekends, we do have to have a custodian present. So the exception on it, so you can see that the proposal stayed the same. So on Sundays, let's take the football field for example. On Sundays, we would allow Streetsboro youth football and soccer to practice games on the turf, games on the turf. That would be coordinated between 8 and 5 on Sundays, 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Sundays. That would be coordinated through our high school head coaches. The only time we would have to have a custodian under our negotiated agreement cover that, to clean up and be present when those teams are there. So we're going to have to charge some fees for custodial, the custodians. If they have a tournament or a game at the current high school field, the turf, we're going to have to charge for a faculty manager to be there because the equipment in that press box is very high tech. And in order to run the scoreboard and to do that, we have to have it. And that faculty manager charge, and I apologize if one part says 40 and this is 45, it's $40 an hour for a faculty manager, and then we'd also have to have a custodian present. But typically, those games on Sundays, if they use it for a tournament or a day-long gaming event, they're going to be charging gate fees anyway. Exception to that rule, we already had made a rule or a policy that we allow all of our Streetsboro youth football to use the stadium one time during the season and one time during the playoffs for free, and we don't charge them for that. So this would be beyond that, okay? We already allow free use of what used to be the old high school field, which is probably one of the best grass fields in northern Ohio. Before we passed the bond issue, we put over $1 million into that stadium and lights and new turf and drainage, and we maintain that field. So that is one of the best grass fields out there, our middle school stadium. So we've designated that during the week to our teams, our football teams and our soccer teams. But then again, on weekends, there's free use to that. So I guess in a nutshell, what I'm proposing is if you go down there, conditions of use, it shows you the only time that there's going to be a charge, and we'll put all of this into a policy and get this out to the youth folks if you guys approve of it. All school events will always take precedence over youth events in our athletic facilities. There have been cases where it hasn't happened here in a long time, but if a Friday night there's a storm and the referees call the game and we have to turn around and play a game on Saturday, which might bump a JV game to a Sunday. These are all the what ifs. If I, as superintendent and as athletic director, we reserve the right to cancel any scheduled youth events during an unforeseen circumstance, because our varsity and JV, our school athletics are gonna take precedence over non-school athletic events. So at this point, I'd like to open that up for discussion. So again, in a nutshell, we're proposing free use of our athletic facilities. The only charges would come on special events for like tournaments where they need someone to run the game clock. And if it's beyond the hours of our custodians, under our negotiating agreement, we've got to pay for a custodian. And an overtime custodian from our youngest guy is going to probably be around $25 to $27 an hour, and our senior person would probably be closer to $47 to $50 an hour overtime. And I can probably say that typically it's our younger guys that take the overtime, but I can't say that because our more senior custodians could say, hey, I want to earn some extra money. So there's your range. So that's my proposal.
Any discussion? You recall whenever we talked about this before, I did make the comment that we don't want to profit from them, but we also need to cover days that we're not open. So I think this does make sense.
And it also says that if we have a calamity day, we cancel events.
It makes sense, and hopefully the youth groups are happy with that proposal.
Other feedback? You can read down through the specifics of it. Are there other questions, comments? I just want to make sure people understand that it's going to be free use unless it goes beyond a custodian day.
So if we have a custodian, in the building and they schedule an event,
We're not going to charge.
we're not charging.
Nope. Before we were charging $10 to $15 an hour, I believe, before, and that's been for at least since I've been here, and I've been here since 2010.
And the previous discussion also was that by contract, the custodian has to be there an hour before and an hour after.
Correct.
So again, going with what Brian said, the custodian is there already doing their work. There is no charge an hour before or during. But if for some reason that event's scheduled to go late, the custodian say gets off at 10 o'clock, the event's gonna go until 10 o'clock, then we have an hour's worth of fees.
And I do want to say too, that our youth groups, our youth sports have been really good about, we're done at 10. They've been, I think there's only been a couple special circumstances where they've asked permission to stay beyond that 10 o'clock, and they said, we understand that we're gonna have to pay. So to the credit of the youth coaches, they've never abused that. John, I think you had some questions or comments.
This looks great, much better than before, really. Nice job putting it together with you and Randy, but very happy with it, so nice job.
And then I would like permission also then from the board as well to study for a year. Let's see how many youth teams use the facility on Sunday, because again, we're opening up the big ask was the high school turf on Sundays. Let's see how many people are using that. And we may need then to revisit the custodian charges. And maybe, depending on the number of people who use it, maybe the district could entertain, do we do some sort of split? I think that because it's too much of an unknown right now, I think that we need to charge our overtime hours, but we'll study that for a year, and we can revisit this next spring after we see how much it's actually used. Because I really, honestly, because we haven't allowed it, I really don't know how much the youth teams are going to actually use the facilities on Sundays. The hope is that they'll use it. I mean, that was what we heard loud and clear in our coffee talk from our youth coaches. I heard that from some of you. Hey, let's get this opened up. We already knew the intent. The reason we had locked it down, we thought we were really trying to protect these facilities, keep them brand new, so that but you know what? The point was heard loud and clear that we're going to open them up. You know, and if there's a problem, and if Andres' orienteering group ruins the stadium, then Andres' orienteering group's insurance is going to pay for the damage to the stadium, period. So
We're not going.
that's what we're going to do. And I'm just poking fun at Andres because orienteers, I don't think would damage the stadium, but they're a wild group. Looking at their compasses.
Nor are they Streetsboro U, so.
That's just what we should try.
Okay. Anything else for that item?
Yeah, and then I guess just one other quick thing, I'm sorry, I apologize. We've had a lot of semi-professional teams that have asked to use the stadium, and I have declined those. Feedback from fellow superintendents that anytime a semi-professional team comes in, lots of alcohol gets smuggled in, and the facilities are left in a mess, and they don't really take care of them because they come in, they play their game, and then they leave. And so unless I get direction, otherwise I've kept, my plan is to keep our facilities for Streetsboro youth. And if we have some tournaments, like an AAU tournament, there's gonna be a charge, but we're gonna work with those folks. Especially if it's in Streetsboro AAU team, then we're gonna work with them. There will be a charge, but we're gonna work with them on that. But I'm gonna, unless I'm given direction otherwise, adult semi-professional sports are gonna stay out of our facilities.
Good idea.
Okay, go back to our board agenda, and then I have one other item. That would be our Facebook page. So I did, Andres and I were working all summer long. Again, part of our levy cycle between November and May, I had a lot of folks reaching out to me personally, and I'll say professionally, about why doesn't the district have a Facebook page? And, you know, my response was our PTA does an unbelievable job of keeping folks informed, and they always have. They've gone above and beyond. Our PASS organization does the same thing, Levy Committee PASS organization. And what I didn't want, this is not a criticism of anyone, but what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to spend my time as your superintendent all day long answering posts on Facebook. I didn't think that that's what you hired me to do. And there were means to get a hold of me if you had questions, and I wasn't going to sit and monitor a Facebook page all day long. But I watching how our PTA, and I'll say PASS, and I apologize if I'm leaving anyone out, it's not intentional, but I'm going to use those two people, those two groups, because they did such an excellent job supporting us in getting correct information out there. When there was an information explosion, those two pages did a great job of getting the correct information out. They've done that for years. You know, I kind of looked critically at myself, and I kind of dug my heels in about that. And I think that when you look at our consumers, our parents that are sitting in the audience, our folks that are 18, 19, and 20 and up, their primary, not kids, I'm talking about our adults, our parents, and our citizens. Honestly, right now, the primary medium for information is Facebook. So what Andreas and I did is we put together a Facebook page. We kind of modeled what PTA does, and had some behind the scenes talk with Christy DeToro with PTA. And what we rolled out was a Facebook page that's informational. So we're going to do everything we can to post as much as we can. And we're going to, I told Christy that every time I see a post when I have time, and when Andre sees a post that goes up on the Facebook page, we're going to pirate it and we're going to put it up on the district page. And Christy is supposed to do the same thing. We're talking to her, she's going to talk to her vice presidents that if they see something go up on ours, they're going to put it up on theirs. And we're going to try and because we recognize some people might go to PTA and some people might not know about PTA and might come to the district. So we want to kind of mirror each other's pages and work together. In addition to that, I'm going to be meeting with Christy or her designee. I don't know if it'll be her or if it'll be someone else monthly, at least monthly. And Christy has my district cell phone number, and I'm going to tell her to give it to all of her, is it her generals or vice presidents or VPs? Because again, let's support each other and get that information out there. What our page does not have, that you might see, let's say on the Streetsboro discussion board, is an open forum where people can just post whatever they want and say whatever they want. Because what we didn't want was this necessarily to become a he said, she said type thing. We wanted this to be informational. There is a means to message the district on that page, and Andres and I are committed to doing our best. You guys know that my job is pretty intense at times, and so is Andres, but we're going to do our best within a day's time to respond to questions on Facebook. There might be days, there are going to be personal messages to us, we'll answer them back to them. They're not going to go up on the page, the questions. Because I don't believe that I have time to sit and field questions back and forth all day on a page. So the goal is to make it informational. And one of the things I told my administrative team, we had an administrative retreat all day today. I left from that and came directly here. One of the things that we're focusing on is communication. And every one of my principals have been given the directive that every Friday or Sunday, they can choose either Friday or Sunday, they're going to be sending an email out through Final Forms to every one of their building parents. And then we're gonna take those same emails then, and we're gonna put them up onto our Facebook page. We also have a lot of other things in the works for communication. I'm not gonna give you any details on that right now. One thing I will say is that in probably September, October, you're gonna hear me talk about, we're gonna start a communications task force, and we're gonna ask for volunteers from the community to become a part of that. And the goal of that task force will be to, let's brainstorm ways that the district can meet all of our consumers. And it has to be fiscally responsible as well, because we can't just hire someone to be our communications specialist. We're cutting $600,000 plus a year. We cut positions from our district. So, but I believe that if we get a lot of people in the same room together and we maybe do some polling of our residents, we can come up with ways to try and meet the needs. And I'm going to be taking my administrative team through at our next meeting. We're going to be going through an exercise of communication, and they were going to do it today, but we ran out of time, on different types of communication that's needed, because very frankly now we have basically 4 different generations that we deal with, from our employees all the way through our parents and then our community members. And so we need to be sensitive to the way each one of those generations consumes information, and we need to come up with ways to try and reach all of those generations. So as an administrative team, we're going to address that. And then once we've got some action plans, then we're then going to begin a communications task force. So the Facebook page is the first step in that. I'm still going to be on my day-to-day out in the building. Mr. Io, our new director of curriculum, and his day-to-day out in the building. Andreas, his day-to-day around the district. We're going to still be using Twitter because it's quick. You can take a picture, type a quick thing, and hit it up. So the day-to-day stuff is still going to be Twitter. That Twitter feed is still posted to our webpage. I don't know that there's a way to post the Twitter feed to Facebook. I don't know that answer. I don't think that there is, because they're separate platforms. But anyway, we're trying to get better. And I'm going to say something that I made a post on publicly the other day, is that I'm trying to do a better job as this district's leader of being better at communicating. We have a long way to go. We recognize that, and I recognize that, and we're trying to get better. So these are some of the things that we're doing.
To that end, personally, I don't want to see any of our district administrators responding to social media posts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You'll end up getting burned out and just start really hating the job because it's all you're doing. And nothing against PTA, and nobody's complained about this from PTA, but I think, to me, sometimes it seemed like some people on PTA were getting some heat because information wasn't posted. And so PTA shouldn't feel like they have to hurry to put information up, and neither should the district. If somebody has a question, as soon as it can get answered, it'll get answered by whomever, whatever entity it is, PTA, the individual buildings. I know a lot of the buildings have their own Facebook pages, which is great. And then the district page plus the website. So if we can just keep that up and during business hours, take care of it. If somebody catches it after hours and takes care of a comment, a question, so be it. But nobody should feel that they have to do it all night long until everybody's gone to bed. Any other comments or questions for Mike?
That concludes my report.
Mike, Andreas would like to speak. You okay with that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Andreas.
I just wanted to comment on the page, the way we did it. We set up the messaging to automatically sort of give someone an away message if it's after hours. And so we set it from 7:30 to 4:30. And then it'll even say, like, thanks for contacting us. We'll take a look at it. But that way, if someone sends a message at 8 p.m., there's sort of an explicit not expectation that we're online at that time.
So they're not expecting.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to treasurer's report, Mr. Scarsatino.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. So we have our 3-year look back of fiscal history to the general fund. As of June 30th, 2019, the general fund had a balance of $3,156,000, or $56,826.52. This is a decline of $1,058,123.97 from June of 2018. Our expenditures at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2019, for $25,487,156.27, which was a little less than our forecast predicted, which is great. The forecast predicted $25,507,544. Our revenue for the year was $24,429,032.30, and our forecast predicted $24,336,927. So we spent $58,123.97 expenditures over revenue, which is better than what we projected, but we still want to bridge that gap in deficit spending because we are still in deep deficit spending, but we're starting to really narrow that gap down. We want to continue to narrow that gap down, and we're trying to do everything in our power to do so. We're going to continue doing that. And then one quick reminder, we do have 2 renewal levies on the ballot in November. One is 3.5 mil that will generate about $1.5 million, and we have another one that's 3.9 mil that will generate about $1.7 million. And these are renewals; they will not increase taxes. They're just the renewal levies that are up.
Okay, any questions or comments for CJ? That concludes our lunch. Moving on to board reports, Mrs. Ballard.
I just want to remind you all that at the first football game of the season on August 30th, that the PTA will be holding their traditional tailgate, and I'm sure they would welcome all of you to attend from 5 to 7, so put that on your calendar. With regard to the legislative update, I just wanted to tell you that the budget discussion wrapped up in the State House on July 18th. They were 18 days past their own deadline, but they did get the budget done, and the legislature is now in recess until September, and they may begin holding hearings on the academic distress commissions or the Patterson funding plan earlier than perhaps projected. So within the budget that was recently passed, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things really quickly. I'm sorry, I have to put on my glasses. So there's $38.5 million for school districts that experienced enrollment growth between 2016 and 2019 in the budget. There's also a 1-year moratorium on the establishment of new academic distress commissions. So you know we already have a handful of schools in Ohio that have been taken over, Youngstown, Lorraine, and there were some that were under the microscope, but there's been a moratorium put on that until it can be looked at deeper. There are new, surprise, surprise, a new system of high school graduation requirements that will go into effect beginning with the class of 2023, and an extension on the current moratorium on the requirement for storm shelters in school projects to September 15th, 2020, and a requirement to issue a study on the issue. So I just wanted to highlight those couple of things if you're interested. This was in something that was sent out by OSBA. I can forward that to all of you. And also, I was down in Columbus this past weekend for a meeting at OSBA, and I have the PowerPoint from our lobbyist at OSBA that goes over a lot of the issues that are happening down in Columbus. So if you need some nighttime reading, I'm happy to forward that to you also.
May I just add to that really quick, just so the board does know that our funding for 2 years was flat. We were receiving the exact same amount of money for the next 2 years that we had the previous 2 years. The only exception to that would be there were some mental health dollars that were funneled to all the districts. So we did receive mental health dollars, and it's pretty wide open how we can use that each year for the next 2 years. Just to give you an idea, we hired last year, we hired 2 elementary guidance counselors, and those mental health dollars will about cover the addition of those 2 elementary guidance counselors. So if you do the math, that is some savings to our general fund, but the disappointing part, at least from the superintendent's chair, was the fact that our budgets remain flat. And actually, that's the first time in a while that they've remained flat. We've always gotten a a small increase, but at least it was an increase. We had a zero increase except for the mental health dollars. So it was very, from my standpoint, mental health dollars are needed, but they basically say, yeah, we're not gonna give you an increase, we'll give you a little bit of money to deal with mental health, which we'd already done. But they increase our operating budgets.
So I would just say, now that I work for a public entity, I spent a lot of time watching the Ohio Channel, which broadcasts the hearings for, as they discuss the state budget. And there is a lot of pressure, and it all depends on priorities and where the legislature places their priorities. And I've heard time and time again from our lobbyists down in Columbus that it really does make a difference when we as school board members contact our state senator, contact our representative. I mean, just, people keep, as they had the budget hearings, I mean, all worthy causes, but at some point you have to draw the line. And if we need to keep education in the forefront of our legislators and make sure that they uphold the language that's in the state constitution to provide for public education. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Denise. The only thing I have for music boosters is if you've driven past the high school, you notice the band is already out playing. They're practicing. Band cards are on sale. They had their tag day this past weekend. If you did not get a band card, see any band booster parent or contact one of the directors, and they will make sure you get a card. They are still only $10, but if you use them several times, then it's paid for itself. So it's a great deal. Mr. Kelly.
Just a couple things. Denise mentioned the first football game. Thanks for doing that. We had one of our 18U baseball teams that's in the Twinsburg Baseball League. It's an 1,800 team, like I said. All the players consisted of Streetsboro kids. They won the championship, so that's pretty cool, I think. So it's nice to look at that. All the kids there were no seniors on the team, so they're all juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. So a lot to look forward to in baseball. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Violi.
Just real quick, I sent everybody the notes from the Maplewood meeting from last month. We'll let you know that there is some construction going on in Maplewood, and it's a lot of interior things that are happening there to update the building. Building's like 60 plus years old, and if you look at it from the exterior, interior, it's a pretty well kept facility, but they're trying to bring it into the 2020 age. Some of the construction may continue on through the beginning of the school year for a short period of time, but will not affect any of the learning in the classrooms. The last thing I have is PASS will be putting on the ice cream social again this year. It will be on the 18th, I believe. That's a Sunday from 2 to 4, right?
Correct, in City Park.
In City Park, where it has always been. So
The last year we had to have it, the annex
Wow,
deal,
across
but City Park.
but it's we have City Park this year again. So hope to see everybody there to start off the new school year. Yep.
Free ice cream.
Free ice cream.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, since we have some discussion to have on this, I'd like to move item I off the consent agenda and consider that individually. Okay, so it is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through K with the exception of I.
Second.
Moved in second, any discussion? I just want to say there are some donations made. Thank you to everyone for continuing to support our schools, the companies, and the individuals that are doing that. Hearing no other discussion, please call for the vote.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mrs. Ballard,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item I, it is recommended the Board of Education declare destinations impractical in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code 3327.01 due to low ridership and the inability to furnish additional buses and drivers to provide conveyance, and will offer payment in lieu of transportation to the following schools: Biomed Ravenna Campus, grades 4 and 5, Biomed Rootstown 9 through 12, Hudson Montessori in Hudson, and Holy Family in Stowe. Yes, for a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
They're moved and seconded. So my understanding is that after talking with Mike earlier, that we did not get final numbers from Biomed until this week.
late last week.
Late last week, okay, my misunderstanding. And then the route, because it seems like it's a, pretty done deal, like you just go from Maplewood to there, pick up the kids, and then we have another stop to make. So is that not possible?
So what I can do is I can explain why this was deemed impractical. So first of all, as far as the timing, I know there were some folks that called the board office today. I was giving that feedback when I came back from our administrative retreat, that were upset about it being deemed impractical, but also the timing. So when private schools, charter schools, or in this case, we're talking about biomed, they don't call us and tell us who the students are that are coming to the district or to their school. The responsibility, unfortunately, we usually find that out when a parent says, hey, I'm gonna go to biomed and I would like to, they request transportation, or when biomed gets back into session or a few weeks prior to, they send a notice letting us know that the students have enrolled. So in June, it was about the middle of June, we put up on our website, a transportation form that if you're going to request transportation on district development form. And that's the means that we use, and the other ways I just said, when people call us. The reason that final list wasn't gathered until last week, because very frankly, in July, people take their vacations. And so we began that data gathering at the beginning of August. So it was late, it was very late. So when a route is deemed practical under 30 miles, the Ohio Department of Education and Ohio law says that when a district has to actually hire an additional driver to meet a route, then you can deem it impractical. Now, your question, Kevin, was that, our bus rides right by there, and it does. So the problem is the timing. So we have 14 students currently that we know of that are enrolled in the Ravenna campus, the 4-5 campus. So in the past, as some of our speakers talked about, that the kids would ride to the high school and then they would hop on the Maplebrook bus at the high school, and then they would get dropped off at Shalersville after we dropped the Maplewood kids off. And that is correct. The hiccup is this, it's the timing, is the 4-5 building day hours are not the same as the biomed in Shalersville, which is the middle school, and also then the Maplewood students. In that route, that driver does take our Maplewood kids, they drop the Maplewood kids off, they drop the Shalerville kids off, the middle school kids, and then they have to go to Depper and in the morning they have to do a Depper run and drop Depper kids off. And at the end of the day, they have to actually go and pick up the Maplewood kids at their dismissal. Then they get to the Shalerville campus for their dismissal. And then they get to Depper right just about at the Depper dismissal. So if you're thinking proximity on that return trip, there's no way for that bus to go to Maplewood, go to Shalersville, go back to Ravenna, and then get to Depper in time for the Depper dismissal, because then that driver has to take Depper kids home. That's part of her route. So because of that, it was deemed impractical because we actually have to hire another driver. So that's why that route was deemed impractical.
If we hired a new driver, will we have a bus for that driver?
We currently have 2 spare buses.
But the bus driver themselves would be what, about 30?
With benefits over $30,000, about $35,000 with benefits.
If I understood correctly, the bus can go to Maplewood and pick up those students. Then because of timing, when the students are released, it next goes to Shalersville
for their release.
And then because of the time that Biomed Ravenna gets out, they would have to come back up 44.
Correct.
To pick up those students, and then they would be later getting to Depper.
Then they would be too late getting to Depper for that bus. And in the morning, and again, and I don't have this answer, but in the morning, those students going to the 4-5 building in Ravenna would have to be dropped almost 40 to 45 minutes off before the start of their day. And I don't know this at all, maybe they would, but I don't know that they would accept those students 45 minutes or 40 to 45 minutes early. I don't know that, maybe they would, but that's part of the morning issue. Those kids, if they could find their way to the high school in the morning, because I hesitate putting elementary kids on a high school bus, but if we just go from the examples, if they found their way to the high school in the morning and hopped the Maplewood bus in the morning, that would still get those kids dropped off at the Ravenna campus, the 4-5 building, the new one at Fortis, about 40 to 45 minutes before the start of their day. And I don't know, and so then that becomes a coverage issue for biomed, but that also is an issue of those kids riding on a high school bus. And again, there's both schools. It's a 50-50. Some parents say absolutely not. Other parents are fine with it. But the issue, so that's the issue in the morning. Parents would have to get their kids to high school to hop the Maplewood bus up at the high school. But then I don't know if it's okay or not okay for those kids then to arrive about 40 to 45 minutes early at the Ravenna campus. But the bigger issue is the home. It just doesn't work. So we would actually have to add a driver. And I know one suggestion was, well, can we use vans? If we have one district van holds 8 kids?
6.
6, okay.
It's the max.
And we have one van, and that van is actually used every day for transportation of students with disabilities.
So the van idea would not work because we have to.
Not with the current van that we have. We'd have to purchase more vans, and again, then hire drivers to drive those vans.
If the bus going from Maplewood to Shalersville, if they would go to the Ravenna campus and pick up, about how much later would they be getting back here?
They couldn't, because the school day for the 4 or 5 building in Ravenna ends significantly after the Maplewood run.
So they would not, even if they went to Shalersville.
Well, if the biomed released their kids about a half hour early of their day, then that would work.
When they, I don't really know this, but when biomed sets their schedule, knowing that they're dependent on, or their parents would be dependent on other school districts for transportation, do they reach out and say, what is your schedule, or?
Andres is raising his hand, so our director of transportation.
We haven't had any communication at all from any of the biomed campuses.
But to biomed's
So the way we.
defense, we
yeah.
don't have any communication really from any of our non-publics until
Right.
it's virtually right before school starts. Here's our roster to transport the kids if you're going to, then we have to deem routes impractical or transport.
So
I understand that they don't have a responsibility to notify us, and we have no idea who's going to be leaving our district and attending, unless a parent calls us and tells us, or they fill out a form.
We're talking about 13.
14 students that we know of as of today, 14. That could change, go up or go down.
And so it seems like there's a little bit of a hole in the system. I don't think that, I mean, how do we know?
We don't.
Is it possible to have 1 or 2 routes here at Deptford delayed slightly until that bus can get back?
I'm going to answer that as no, because what we had to do this year was we had to redo our routes and our building times this year because we paid so many people coverage overtime last year because we had routes that were delayed coming into SES. Our elementary routes, we had to pay teachers and aides overtime every day to cover kids because our routes were coming in so late. So we changed our building times in order to accommodate that so that we can eliminate overtime, keep kids in classrooms learning, and go from that to buses and home. It's something that was a huge problem last year when the previous transportation director built routes. The routes didn't make sense and they weren't equitable, and they ended up going over the 4-hour limit, which is what our drivers are contracted for. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours, 4 hours collect for a day. And that was one of the biggest things that Andreas had to tackle, was making it so our drivers stayed within their 4 hours and getting our kids to and from school without creating coverage issues for our teachers. Because our teachers and staff members, at the end of the day, we cannot make them stay in cover. And we were having upwards of 200 to 300 kids having to be covered for up to 20 to 30 minutes by staff that volunteered and then were volunteered to be paid. That they had to volunteer at the end of their day to do that. And it was a significant burden financially for the district. And again, we had to fix that. And that was something that when Andres took over, I was one of the first things I told him, you got to fix these routes. They're a mess. They're a mess from day one. And he did that, and with us modifying our building times, that achieved the overtime issues and the delay issues with the buses.
Possibly one last question. Bill. If we don't do anything with this tonight, can we, by law, wait till next week, see if there's a way to tweak another route somewhere to get those kids picked up? We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We're getting the biomed campus in Ravenna. We don't have any communications with them, because we don't know.
Well, it's also new, this is a
Right,
new entity.
right, it is brand new, but even the history, there's no communication. We just find out what we find out. And usually it's, like with Hudson Montessori and Holy Family, even if 5 more students came in and families came in and said, our students are going to these places, we still wouldn't be able to offer them transportation. They kind of know that up front. But with this being new and there's no communication, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So do we upset potentially 14 of our families, or can we squeeze another week out of this and try to come up with a solution? If we can't, we can't, but if we can.
Well, I know that we've spent a lot of time on this, but I will also say that if you want us to take another look at this, we will. But I do want to say that this is not an attack at any person or family at all.
Oh, no.
What this is a problem with our state funding system. Families have a right to choose where they send their kids, and I'm not arguing that, judging that at all. But if a family chooses to send their kid out of the district to a private school, or in this case to a STEM school, that funding follows that family, the state funding. But the state does not compensate the school district for the transportation of those kids. So then that falls back on the school district. And we are operating on a shoestring. We only have a certain number of buses and a certain number of drivers. So my job, Andres' job, is to create equitable routes without adding staff. And I feel bad about this. And I feel bad that these ladies and gentlemen are not the only ones are here tonight, because now they're in a pinch. They want to give a different opportunity to their kids. And that is great. And we're not judging them, but this is the problem that we're presented with. And the way it stands now, we'll take a look at it, but the way it stands now, we would have to hire another driver to do this route. And I tried to explain why. We will take another look at it, but our routes are full. And we run every route to its limit. But I would see the board walkthrough is on the 16th, I believe.
It was from today.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember the date,
I have it listed as Thursday, August 15th.
yes, that's correct. So between now and then, Andreas and I can look at it and see if there's anything else that we can do. But the board will have to make a decision at that point.
Right. So I think trying to make the best out of a really crappy situation is the parents should be put on notice, start making plans just in case we can't come up with a solution. But we're going to do our darndest to come up with a solution if everybody's okay with that.
I don't know if that's necessary, Kevin, just because, like Mike mentioned, Andreas and Mike have put a lot of time and effort into this. Unless they have some other plan that they can do, I don't know if that's just prolonging it, in my opinion. But
You're
we want to
dragging
do
it out
that, that's
another,
fine.
essentially, you're saying they're dragging it out another week,
Another
just
week.
have to have the same result, which they've already expended time in looking at
I
this.
mean, obviously, we're not gonna hire another driver for $35,000 a year. It's not gonna happen.
We can't get a van routes either.
Right, I mean, it's just, can't happen.
So do you guys want to wait, or do you want to? If you guys want to vote, we'll vote.
I don't know how it could change.
Substitute driver. We're using Crestwood. $15 an hour versus full-time employee, not paying benefits.
So under our negotiated agreement, you cannot put a substitute driver in an established route. You can do that for 60 days, and that's it. I think it's 60 days. And then it becomes under our negotiated agreement. You have to post it as a job or you eliminate it. We can't just put a sub driver on a route.
Not for a full year.
No. It becomes an established route.
We do a substitute until we get this figured out, start school Monday as well.
It's not being informed of this today.
That would be, well, we have to make a decision by the beginning of the school year, or we're stuck with it the entire school year. Correct.
Biomed starts on Monday. That's the other thing. So Biomed starts earlier and they go longer. So
Yeah, communication knew about this long before August 1st. We told our school in May, we found out we were something.
in fairness to us, the challenge is we have no idea, right? Unless we had put a form out.
Andres, if you guys listen, we don't have the back and forth between the audience and the administration. I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know what the time frame is that everybody's been notified. I would like to give it another week, but if the majority of the board says no, then we're gonna vote.
Are you opposed to a substitute driver for 2 weeks?
I cannot answer that because I would need to check with the Ohio Department of Education to make sure that that thing wasn't established now. But we can find out tomorrow. We would do it for 2 weeks.
The 2 weeks is I understand that parents are saying it is Thursday, school starts Monday, and we don't know how we're gonna get our kids there. And at least if we had a week or 2 weeks, we could establish some, maybe carpools or some other way of getting them there. It's a time crunch issue for them.
But if we start transporting them, aren't we obligated to transport?
That's what I need to check. I'll have to call our ODE person assigned to us and ask them that because I don't know the answer. I believe so. Once you start transporting, that you have to transport. But I don't know that for sure, so I would need to contact our ODE rep. And that would have to be done tomorrow.
Would that then, and this may be something that CJ can answer, sorry to put you on the spot, if you don't know the answer, I understand. If we eliminate from this item Biomed Ravenna campus and vote on the others, and
I would change our resolution.
nothing at all, just leave it as is.
Leave it as it is.
Okay. We can do that. If we can find out, then we'll just hold if we have to hold a special board meeting, we will, and then we'll get notices out to the parents as soon as possible tomorrow. If it's a blast call to the parents or email, whatever. Do we have the contact information? Facebook. I'm not trying to make life more difficult for the superintendent or the transportation department.
No, you asked me a question that I'm thinking. I would assume that all of these folks would still be in our blast call system, but I'm not completely sure about that because we purged our blast call system based on enrollment.
We had their numbers from the form that they've.
So we do have this.
Yeah.
Andres just said we do have their numbers. So I guess I don't understand what you're proposing.
If we can find out, going with what Denise had asked, if we can give them 2 weeks of transportation based on your confirming that tomorrow, that it will not be an established route. If we can do it as a temporary fill-in, let them know tomorrow, we can't provide you with transportation. If we have to hold an emergency or say a special board meeting, we'll do that to make that determination. I'm not trying to convolute the process, I'm just trying to, I'm not realizing too that Biomed starts Monday.
So we are transporting to the middle school, right? Because that's a route that has been established already. And so that transportation will start Monday and it transports from our middle school to their middle school and back. And it's something that we do at the end of June for about 2.5 extra weeks as well. We could extend that person driving, right? Because they would have to come back to campus, then pick up probably at Henry Deffer or at the middle school again, and then go back up. And we're doing that next week, so we could add to that schedule. But past that,
But we have to check though to make sure that once you start transporting.
right?
Also, I would like to ask the board, and this doesn't help the parents right now. I don't know what the answer is. We have to find that question, answer that question out tomorrow, but there might be, I'm trying to think of some things that possibly we could do about transporting those kids, like to the middle school, the Biomed middle school, and dropping them off, and then we could try and call all of the school districts that are transporting kids, have a bus going there, if they have a bus going from there, then maybe to the new Rootstown or Ravenna campus, and they would agree to transport. That's a shot in the dark, but we could try and do that.
You're asking somebody to take a big responsibility when you do that, Mike.
It would be up to that district.
I was looking some information up online, trying to find if they had anything about that through ODE, and I'm not finding it. If we can do that tomorrow and hold off on this one, and I don't mean to prolong it, but we gotta do something to try to help the parents out. I understand work's already been done, but if there's a possibility that we can do that, another district even.
I don't know if there is, but that it just, as I'm sitting here thinking about this,
You could still accept this and we could still look into it, but then this is.
well, you could pass this resolution and then you could change the biomed portion of it to the Ravenna campus if we come up with another solution.
It'd be unfair to say you're gonna try and do something and then have to very last minute.
I know it's not citizens' comments, but I think I can help you with something.
Go ahead.
Should I say my name and address for the record again?
We know your comment.
Okay.
This is
I was-
unprecedented. We normally don't do this, but this is just such a really crappy situation that
So one thing I was gonna suggest is, because obviously my kid's been going to biomed for a few years and I watch all this, is what the city of Kent does is for the kids that go to biomed, is all the kids that go there go to Edina High School and they partnered with PARTA. And then for like $50, the family buys a pass. And then the PARTA bus picks them up from the campus and takes them to the Rootstown campus. So maybe I would just suggest, I know that's something that they've done in the past is try to work with PARTA. I think you're one of the liaisons.
Yeah, I am, but unfortunately, PARTA doesn't do charters. The thing is, PARTA actually has a stop at Kent High School as well as Ravenna High School. Those stops are established stops that are already there. And the bus runs on a loop. So it's not like, I mean, I can't speak because I've only been there several months, but it's not like they established that's, I'm guessing for that specific purpose. Those are regular stops that they're operating right now. If you were at Kent Roosevelt, you could hop on a bus right now if it was still running.
Well, I'm just saying like just that's one thing, maybe just an avenue to explore because I know that's how some of the other districts walk.
We do not do school transportation.
Well,
We have regular stops, bus stops. And then, like I said, there is a stop at Kent Roosevelt High School, and there is also a stop at Ravenna High School that are part of our regular fixed route system. And I don't want to speak for the organization, but so I'm just kind of speaking, that's my general knowledge, that those are where there are stops.
Well, maybe it would be,
stops at.
maybe it would be easier for PARTA to set up a new route in Streetsboro than it would be for us to do it. I mean, I don't know, it's worth a phone call, but I just thought I'd offer that, thank you.
something else to consider. So hearing everything from the board, again, thank you for the conversation. Really appreciate it. We have a motion and a second. The superintendent can make a decision to change that with then going back to the board for approval at our next meeting. So if you're okay, let's go ahead and vote with the understanding that they're gonna make the phone calls tomorrow. We're gonna see what we can do, make the change. And if that changes, I guess regardless, everybody will be notified so that they know what they're doing. We're gonna try to get transportation somehow set up for Monday for those students. But right now, we're gonna vote as it is right here. So you got our guarantee on that we're gonna do our darndest. So we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Please call for the vote.
Mrs. Battle,
Yes.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly. Yes. Mr. Grimm.
Yes. And we will definitely get some information for you tomorrow. at the latest. Moving on, Mr. Dalbaugh, any recommendations?
I don't have any.
Mr. Scarpino,
I do not have any.
is there any new business? Any old business? Then, my computer decides to work. Board President's recommendations, item A,
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the appointment of Denise Baba as delegate and Brian Violi as alternate delegate to the 2019 Annual Business Meeting of the Ohio School Boards Association Capital Conference in Columbus.
I'll move. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mrs. Baba,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes, motion carries. Item B, it is recommended the Board of Education enter into executive session to consider the discipline of a public employee or official with no action to follow.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Baba,
Yes.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes, motion carries. We are in executive session at 7:25.
Well, to conclude this session, we're gonna go ahead and do a quick little recap on everything you might have missed. Not too much going on tonight, but the item that was most interesting, and likely most interesting to the public out there, was the proposed increase in family and individual sport passes. These are passes that allow homeowners of all home sport